All right, podcasters, welcome to another episode of the Thriving Dog Pawcast. Today, I'm lucky to have on the show Matt Rowe from Parsley Pet. Matt is a certified dog nutritionist, raw feeding specialist who takes the guesswork out of feeding your dog a healthy diet by providing at-home pet health testing. So from a single hair sample, Parsley Pet will determine a whole host of things about your dog's diet. They'll test for over 48 key nutrients and heavy metals and give you a nutritional blueprint for your dog, which I'm super excited to get into all the details on that. And Matt started the company after losing his own dog to cancer. And so his mission through Parsley Pet is to reverse the statistic that over half of all dogs over the age of 10 will die of cancer. And Parsley Pet is also involved in the animal exposure study that identifies herbicide poisoning in pets. Super big issue. You can learn more about Matt and order your nutritional blueprint at parsleypet.com. You can also register for their weekly educational conversation called Essential Nutrition for a Healthier Dog on their Facebook page called Parsley Pet. And of course, they're also on Instagram as we are at Parsley Pet Wellness. And Matt is a fellow podcaster. Be sure to check them out at the Pet Wellness Revolution podcast. So Matt, thanks for your patience there in my long intro, and welcome to the show.
I love the intro. It's you did an incredible job. Thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. You want to take a second to fill in anything I might have missed there, and we'll get right into things?
No, you're hired. You're at that point, you're just joined the team and you did a phenomenal job. So yeah, I mean, essentially something that we're really passionate and concerned about is that statistic you mentioned that 50% of dogs over the age of 10 will be diagnosed with cancer. And in our pre-show, we talked a little bit that our doctor on staff, we have vets on staff that analyzes every test that comes through our facility. And I remember one doctor looking at me and shaking her head going, Matt, that statistic is wrong. 2/3 of dogs are showing that they have cancer. And at a younger age, she was treating a dog that was 18 months old that had cancer. So the dogs, they should not be experiencing cancer at such a young age. And when you start to follow the thread of this, you realize it's the nutrition in the foods that they eat.
Wow. Yeah, that's a pretty alarming statistic. I have a brand of products just for golden retrievers, and I'd known that 2/3 of Goldens will come down with some form of cancer, which was supposedly more than any other dog breed. But with those statistics, it seems like all breeds are just right up there with them.
Yeah, it's more and more, and this is where the best way to phrase it is, eating kibble is a highly processed diet. So, I mean, to make a kibble product, they are basically putting a bunch of stuff into a rendering facility, and they're not being discretionary on what they add to that rendering facility to be the protein in that actual product. Then once it gets made, they're adding carbohydrates and other fillers to it. So, for example, they're adding corn byproduct. Well, as far as I know, I've never seen a dog chase an ear of corn through a field. They really, it's not really something that they digest very well, and it is really just a inflammatory that they consume. So by eating that is the equivalent of us eating cornflakes every day. So if you ate cornflakes breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I have a feeling your hair would fall out and you'd start itching, and you'd be going into your doctor being like, yeah, something's not right. But the problem is our dogs can't tell us that. They itch. They have other issues that pop up. They have renal failure. They have all of these other inflammatory conditions that happen inside their bodies, and they can't tell us. The only thing that we basically wait for is them to come down with something, an extreme condition that we can observe. And so it is really with that nutrition that we feed a dog that has sparked this whole raw feeding movement of individuals feeding a dog the way that they were genetically meant to be fed. But the problem is it's not taught very well, and it's not condoned by your veterinarian. I mean, a lot of vets don't receive nutritional training. The average vet only receives 7 hours of nutritional training throughout their entire schooling, and that training is taught by Purina. So you now know why that there's a wall of prescription dog food at your vet clinic when you go there. because they are indoctrinated into it from early on at school.
Yeah, Sonny was on the big old green bag of Purina dog chow, and I think they're not even shy about it. I think the first ingredient on there was either whole grain corn or whole grain wheat, one of the two.
Yeah. And when you look at AVCO standards now, not to interrupt, but when you look at AVCO standards now, AVCO is the regulatory industry that says what nutrients need to be in pet food. They just lowered the amount of protein that is actually required in pet food. So now, like, the number one thing your dog, because your dog is a carnivore, and they've studied wolves. And so wolves, you can throw in the whole, it's really an omnivore, but really 5 to 15% of a dog's diet is really coming from vegetable matter that they scavenge, that they find. I mean, a dog doesn't doesn't dig through my garden to get the carrots. It's really looking for the rabbit that's trying to get the carrots.
Yeah. So take us back to the moment, before Parsley Pet even became a reality. What got you started on this path?
On some level is 7 years ago, my wife and I got into the pet industry. And she's really the one that sparked it. She's really the one that sparked all of this education and curiosity. After our dog, you mentioned our dog passed away of cancer. Doc was awesome. Doc was a yellow Labrador, athletic as could be. And she was great running through streams at an old age. I thought she was going to be super healthy. And we fed her kibble because we just didn't know better. And it was within 30 days, she went from chasing a ball to not being able to get over a step in the house. And it was at that point we had to put her down, and it still chokes me up. But it was in that we started to realize and started to see reports of products coming from China that were killing dogs. So they had dyes in toy products. They had other products that from treats that had, they really had at some level documentation that it was that treat that killed the dog. So we said there's got to be a better way. So we started a company called Ello Pet Supply. And we started and it was a distribution company that sourced American-made products and ethically sourced products that we were supplying to hardware store, or not hardware stores, that was a previous life. We started to supply pet stores. We ended up having 1,000 customers nationwide and really growing that business and realizing that the distribution business was a labor of love. We didn't make money at it. Even though we grew the company to $1 million in gross revenue in 18 months, we were going to have to grow it to $5 million in revenue before we could take home $50,000 to feed the family. So we kind of decided to let go of that company. But something that beautiful that came out of it was Parsley Pet. And this is where we met one of the original doctors that we have on staff, Dr. Lori Kozier, who is an incredible holistic vet. Started just in discussion, started to share that statistic and why it was happening and her theory and philosophy on it. And really, I remember the plane ride coming home from Super Zoo trade show where I said, is there a way to actually see inside a dog to know if whether or not they're getting all the proper nutrition? And we saw this raw feeding movement of all these individuals that were doing a natural home-based diet. And we started to realize maybe they're not doing it correctly. How would they know if they're doing it right? And that spawned our first product, which is the Nutritional Blueprint, which is a hair tissue mineral analysis. It's a test that's been around for 30 years, and it's considered by the EPA the only effective way to test for heavy metal exposure. And so when we explored that a little bit further, spawned the Nutritional Blueprint. And so now we are helping and supporting and educating pet parents as they start on this journey to raw. I mean, I know for you, when you started to realize that kibble may not have been best, did you adjust the diet? Did you look at how you were feeding your pups differently?
Well, for me, it's kind of a different path because Sonny was, about 11 when I left home for the military. And that was the last time I saw him. He was happy and healthy when I left. And then I expected I'd see him at Christmas time, but he was already gone. But for me, it was more of my own journey to health, just as a human.
Mhm.
and understanding, getting a sense of like those principles and establishing the right habits and seeing the transformation of myself. And then
Mhm.
one day I was just looking around, and I didn't even have a dog at the time. My girlfriend at the time did, but I remember looking at some products on the shelves, and with my background on the human side of the industry, it's pretty easy to
Right.
tell right away, like, what type of quality product you're dealing with, and the sort of ingredients that were being used. And it
Yeah.
just, everything was falling short on both the food side and the supplement side. And so that, led me to launch Sunny's. But, exactly like you said, you have all these, overly processed kibble, etc. And, it doesn't mean that a dog can't survive on that, but they certainly can't thrive. Right. And that's what
Well said.
we're talking about here. So,
Mhm. And that was, and I ended up stepping onto a similar path with human health. Is I've always been an athlete. I was an All-American triathlete at one point,
wow.
ended up breaking my spine, and eventually led to, me walking again, finishing Ironman, thought I was over it, and stepped into, in 2017, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Mm.
And I remember the doctors telling me and giving me the options of some medication. And I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. The success rates on it were low. My risk was very high in regards to taking the medication. So I decided not to do it. So I started to treat myself differently. And I
Mm.
started to, along with this journey of building Parsley Pet, I was going through and educating myself on my own human nutrition and realizing that diet and stress is paramount to our health.
Wow. Wow. So, someone listening right now who comes to Parsley Pet, I guess, your flagship product is this nutritional blueprint, but from what I
Mhm.
understand, what precedes that is the actual hair mineral analysis test. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, hair tissue mineral analysis.
Hair
They're actually
tissue.
one in the same. So the nutritional blueprint is a hair tissue mineral analysis test.
So what does someone coming to Parsley Pet, how would they get their hands on it? What do they need to do? How long does the results take, and what's like the output of all that?
Absolutely.
What does that look like? Soup to nuts.
Super easy. So you go to parsleypet.com. You will actually, on the products tab at the top, you can drop it down and you can purchase the nutritional blueprint. And so when you purchase that test, you get all of the information that you need. There you go. Love that site.
There we
Um,
go.
so when you go to the products, just like, Tim's showing you, you go to the store, and or you can scroll down, the nutritional blueprint is right there. And so when you purchase it, you receive an email immediately that gives you full instructions on how to send me a sample. Now, at our facility, all I need is 1 tablespoon of your dog's hair and the intake form completed. Intake form can be done online, or you can hand write it. You get both options. Then when I receive the sample, I communicate with you along the entire process. Now, to get our results back, it takes anywhere from 20 to 25 days. And the reason why it takes so long is we get the sample, we ensure that the hair is not been cleaned, because there's a lot of facilities that one way you can test if hair tissue mineral analysis lab is accurate is ask them if they wash their hair. The answer should always be no. Hair, I don't want to test the minerals inside your water. I want to test the minerals inside your dog at an intracellular level.
Mm.
So when you think of hair growth and why we test hair, is when your hair grows, actually clusters of matrix cells are forming the hair follicle inside your head. And I'm here. Right. So forming inside the head. As the hair starts to come up to the surface of your head, right around the base of your neck, as it comes up to that surface, it's hardening and trapping that cellular data
Mm.
that is actually gone to produce that hair follicle. But the cells are actually driven and circulating throughout your body, and it's coming from your blood, your organs, your muscle structure, your bones. So really, it's a full picture inside of your dog's body. Now, Blood is a transport mechanism. So when I test blood, if you've ever gone in for a blood test, they tell you not to eat 12 hours before your blood test because they don't want to see what food you just ate.
Right.
They want to see what's circulating around your body. That's one level. Now we can take it another level because I want to see how your body is actually absorbing the nutrients that you are achieving through food. So a great story I have is we tested my mentor's dog, Casey Maxwell at SF Raw, and she has a Great Dane, Groovy. And we tested Groovy. Groovy, as in all things, should have come back really spot on right. But when we got Groovy's test back, we saw that Groovy was deficient in calcium and iron, where Groovy's blood test showed it was fine, but in our test, it showed that it was deficient. What was happening is the body, in order to remain in homeostasis, which means ultimate health and survival, the body was actually robbing calcium from the bone in order to keep the blood supply full, because calcium is involved with muscle, and actual having a muscle functioning properly. So it's keeping the heart, pumping. Your body is more interested in keeping you alive than it is to have, your bones break. So because of this, it was robbing calcium from the bone. Blood work showed normal. Our test showed that it was deficient. And then the next phrase that when I was talking to Casey about her results, Casey goes, "That's funny. I've been cutting bone, which is calcium, is where your dog gets calcium, and other sources, but really main part is bone. And I've been cutting organ meat and bone from Groovy's diet. And those are the two things that lead to iron and calcium correct levels." And so really by doing that, she was able to identify a health condition before it actually became prevalent inside Groovy, and she was potentially going to have to take Groovy into the vet. So something that is, we were allowed to take somebody that is a master at formulating a raw diet and really help her refine that even better. Wow. And to get even better to help Groovy. And every dog, just like you and I, Tim, we're different. What I eat is going to be different than what you eat, and how your body absorbs it and what's bioavailable for your body. Well, same for every dog. Every dog is different. And, the kibble companies just try to do a broad sweep. These are the minimum levels your dog needs to achieve, but they have to do it based on synthetic nutrients and minerals, because when they make kibble, they cook it and everything in the kibble is dead. So it's like the equivalent of cardboard when your dog eats it. And it's not something that your dog really is, like, I think you said it very, very well. It keeps them alive. They just don't thrive because of it. We want your dog to thrive. I mean, your dog is a carnivore. And so we should be feeding them like a carnivore. We are omnivores. We can eat meat. We can survive on vegetable matter, but your dog cannot survive on vegetable matter alone or on this heavy carbohydrate base. And that's why you're seeing dogs with that actually have increased obesity today, because they're just eating too much sugar. Yeah. Carbohydrates equal sugar. And so, and that's something that just becomes more and more prevalent with every test we conduct. And it's eye-opening, and it's rewarding to the pet parent that takes the test. And, I've been told many times, I know now. I know what I need to feed my dog. I know what their body is requiring. And as a result, they stay out of the vet. Their coat gets softer. And actually they shed less too.
So a question about the hair analysis. So how does one potentially deal with lag time between, changing a dog's diet and then doing the test, right? So like, let's say, I guess what I'm just envisioning is, if you change a dog's diet and then you do the test right away, those results might not show up. How much of a lag time is needed before the results of, the mineral changes, et cetera, are going to show up in the hair?
If you want to see how the change that you are currently doing is showing up inside the hair, think about it as the length of time it takes to grow the hair. So it can be anywhere from 60 days to 90 days in order to determine if you have that right. What we recommend is, if you're switching from a kibble-based diet, is to test your dog now. And the reason why to test your dog now is we want to identify what nutrients your dog is deficient in. So when you do actually formulate or create the new diet for your pet, you're doing it correctly. You're doing it the best way you know how. So I have a buddy that, along this line, he goes, no, I'll test 4 months after everything's done. So when a couple months later, I talked to him, I'm like, how's feeding Baxter? And he goes, oh, he loves chicken. I'm like, okay, Jeremy, what else does he love? And he goes, no, just chicken and rice is what I feed him. And I'm like, okay, so think of your dog as wild. So if your dog was wild, it'd catch a rabbit and it'd eat the rabbit. And that involves bone, organs, skin, fur. Think of everything that's inside that rabbit. And that's more of a balanced meal for a dog. So just by feeding chicken, Baxter was getting a lot of phosphorus because that's muscle meat from just eating chicken on that level. And then rice is just a filler. Your dog does not need to eat rice. We humanize it, and rice has a lot of arsenic in it. So of where they actually grow rice. And so when we did that, what we should have done with Jeremy, and what I was kind of coaching him to do, is get the test now. So then we can have a discussion about how much organ meat should your dog be eating? How much calcium should your dog be receiving from bone? How much, muscle meat should your dog, how much vegetable matter should you be putting into the diet? So having that and getting the test conducted and then analyzed by our vet will suggest, and, a lot of kibble-based dogs will see that levels are much lower, or the dog is not, the food that dog is eating through kibble, it's not bioavailable for them. So they're not absorbing it into their organs and cells and all of that. They're just excreting it out. And so in that, and case in point, they have to put 5 times the amount of selenium in a kibble-based diet just to meet the min levels required by AAFCO standards. So with that, we recommend getting the test done right away. And that's something that, so you can know for sure, okay, I'm really stepping into this journey of feeding a raw-based diet correctly, that I am doing all of it. And then after you start feeding it, then wait 6 months. Wait 6 months on the new diet, then test them again. And it's like fine tuning it. It's tweaking it in. It's kind of like, when we work out, we look at certain things and we're like, okay, that really, if my body did well with that. And that's why we get personal trainers. We don't just train for 3 months and go, I hope this works. We actually go do our research, look at things, educate ourselves the best way possible. And this is just an education tool. We look at it as it gives you that understanding. And one of our taglines is knowing is better.
So one of your typical customers, what usually brings them to you in the first place? Like, are they on a kibble diet at the time, or have they been on a raw diet and they think, well, maybe I need to tweak this some? What's a typical kind of case study? I know you have a few on the site, but what's like, where are most people when they come to you?
And that's a great question. So if I had 2 circles that I drew in front of you, and if I had a pen, I would draw it and hold it up. So
like
it's kind of
Venn diagram.
It's a Venn diagram. And so really everybody on the left circle feeds kibble. And if you go to the extreme on the left side of the circle, that's individuals that are feeding old Roy, and they're like, it's a dog. If he dies, he dies. That's one, thought process. And then on the right side of the right circle is the extreme raw feeders that feed true prey. I mean, I've multiple. My mentor will throw a rabbit in the backyard.
Yeah, I think I've seen, I interviewed Raw Feeding Miami, and just like SF Raw, you see the pictures of like a duck's head, chicken feet, and rabbit hide. Yeah.
Yep. That's an extreme. That is over on the far right side of the circle. So as individuals are gravitating on the left side of the circle, where those circles intersect and creates this no man's land in the middle. And they are coming off of kibble. So your question was, when do they do it? Is they are coming off of kibble. They've read something. They've followed Rodney Habib. They've, read articles from Dr. Karen Becker. They are really starting to educate themselves. And they're like, oh my God, I'm never going to feed kibble again. And they're stepping into that no man's land space. that's where we can help. So they're either on their raw feeding journey, and let's say they're a couple months into it, and they just really is like, there's no like ingredient list on a package of meat. When you feed them, you're really looking at what is the ideal formulation. And it seems logically easy, and it really is easy to feed a dog raw. And so we want to support them with that. So their first step with us is education. So that's why we hold those educational events once a week. Essential Nutrition for a Healthier Dog is we want you to know and experience all that it has to offer. And really, the core of our business is education. The more I can educate you, the better.
And so what usually happens on one of those calls? Again, for those listening, it's once a week. You can learn all about it on Parsley Pet Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
So what usually happens in what it happens via Zoom? Is it like a Zoom call? Okay.
Yes, it happens via Zoom. I have a presentation that I give. I try to make as much energy and as much fun. I don't want you to go through a PowerPoint presentation. That sucks. Nobody likes to go through the death by PowerPoint, and I don't. Like, we actually, even though, yes, there are slides or pictures and all of that type of stuff, we really want to educate you not only on the why, what, and how, but the because as well. So when we walk an individual through, I talk about why we do it, what it all is, what HTMA is, what the test is, the validity of it, and really start walking it through. And then we step into ideal nutrition. And I'm going to talk about 4 essential nutrients that your dog has to achieve in their diet. Now, there's 48 of them, but no one would stick with me if I went through all 48. Really, what we want is we just hit the top 4 of them, and we just educate individuals to do it. And then at the end of it, I give you guys a gift. I give you guys $50 off the test, because that is something that we want you to experience and enjoy and have that understanding, that knowing, and that kind of, that sense of really, I want to say the word accomplishment, but that word is wrong. Really, that sense of, I know what the heck I am doing. I know what I need to do to actually have ultimate health for my pup and actually have them achieve that ideal nutrition and that confidence to know that when you step into your vet and they're telling you all the dangers of raw feeding and all of that stuff, instead of going at it with fear in that moment, I want you to come into that moment with confidence and ask them questions, not to demean them or to anything that, that goes after their education level. They're crazy smart individuals. They love pets as much as we do. And I love our vet community. And it's really on that side of really empowering you as a pet parent to ask better questions and to be confident that when you step in there, you confidently say, yeah, I feed raw and I do it this way and I do it based on these standards. And my dog's health has not been better in that moment.
And what are those 4? The test will cover 48 nutrients. What are the 4 really, really essential ones that you mentioned?
Calcium is a big one. It's the one that we see that is most deficient in a diet. When people start to step into raw feeding, they're just not feeding enough bone. And we give suggestions. And, when we go through calcium, these are the issues that happens when they don't have enough. This is what happens when they have too much. And then also, this is what you can eat in order to increase those calcium levels. Second one is iron. We go through iron because lack of iron leads to anemia inside the body. So we really want to make sure that your dog is building proper blood cells. And so, that strength that comes from doing that. Same thing is at the end of it, we're going to tell you where to get better iron sources. Another one is phosphorus. Phosphorus is something that we have to have inside of our bodies. Even as humans, we have to have it. And so when we step into phosphorus, this starts to take a look at, where you get it from, which is muscle meat. By eating the muscle, think of the rabbit in the field. When they eat that muscle and that rabbit, they're getting phosphorus. And then the other one that we talk about is magnesium. Magnesium is one of my favorite ones because this really starts to affect mood and our mental ability. And so for our pets that have high anxiety or pets that maybe have aggression issues that walk down that where maybe they never had it before, but all of a sudden they're kind of changing, their mood is changing and they're not the same dog. Sometimes that's due to a magnesium deficiency.
Interesting. Now, what would you say for folks who, you're obviously a proponent of raw feeding? What would you say to some folks who are, they're not on the old Roy side of the spectrum, and they're not on the I'm going to feed my dog beaks and feet and guts raw, and they're kind of like,
Right.
but I don't want to feed them kibble, and I want to give it a shot of just doing some home cooked food, and so I'm going to
Yep.
lightly cook some meat, etc. What do you say to folks like that, or to what extent do you see the same or similar levels of results with ones who take that path?
So for those that are successful in that path, they follow individuals like Kim Gutier out of Seattle. They read, they educate, they try to find everything they can in regards to how to actually formulate a good raw diet. One of the mistakes that we see is they don't include enough bone in the diet, as I was saying, and they don't include enough organ meat in the diet. So the best way to think about it is you should be receiving at a basic level 80% muscle meat, 10% bone, 10% organ meat. And all of those levels need to come from a variety source. So every time my mentor taught me, think of the rabbit. Every time I get, setting up a diet for my dog, I think of a rabbit. Then at that moment, start slow. A lot of people step into it, full head of steam, which I truly agree that if your dog has health conditions, and a lot in our vets that we have, we are big advocates of just make the switch, do it all you can.
Mm-hmm.
Find a good co-op in your area, from SoCo Raw to San Francisco Raw to Miami Raw. Find a good company that's in your local area that does supply raw dog food. And what they're doing is they are actually formulating that. They're putting the bone in, they're putting the organ in. So you know that with a little bit more confidence that you are feeding the right amount. Then you can look at how much should I be feeding our dog, which is the next question that I often receive. Really thinking about 2.5% to 3% of body weight, ideal body weight that you want for your dog, you should be feeding them a day. And you're just going to watch them and observe them. So, for example, I wanted more calcium inside my dog, Leo. I have a 60-pound Catahoula. And so I started to feed him spinach. I'm like, oh yeah, a dog should get a little bit of spinach. So I put some in his diet, and it was within hours he started itching. But it was the only thing I added to his diet that was new. And the itching was getting bad that I was having to put socks on his feet so he didn't dig a hole inside where he was itching at, and immediately could point back to, okay, it was spinach. Cut the spinach out of his diet, and it was 6 hours later he stopped itching after the next meal. So that's something that by starting slow and only introducing little items to it, was I able to identify which ones his body was digesting and which ones his body was not. Now, I think with a lot of diets that we do today, we humanize them. You said it. We want to cook it. We want to put the diet, we want to cook the meat, and we think as human beings, we have to cook our meat. Now, think of your dog. When it caught that rabbit, it did not say, okay, I'm going to create my fire and, go out there and got his kindling sticks and spigot and started roasting the rabbit over a fire. No. Your dog ate the rabbit. It didn't worry about it. So inside your dog's body, it is a pH level inside its stomach of 1.8. And that means it's an extremely acidic environment. That's why your dog can eat goose poop when you go on a walk and not throw up. It really is just, it's a scavenger. It's going and looking for food anywhere it can get. But that's why its stomach is so acidic. And that's why your dog can actually eat raw meal. It can eat stuff that may have some pathogens in it. Now, you don't want to keep that raw food out for any extended period of time. Think of your own food. You wouldn't leave meat out on the counter for a couple days and then cook it and eat it. You're really looking at it saying, okay, frozen. So if you do want to feed the rabbit, like go to the far right side of the extreme, you're excited, you're a hunter, you're like, I'm going to feed Leo a rabbit. You really want to freeze that rabbit for 3 weeks and make sure all pathogens have been killed in it, all diseases have been killed inside that rabbit. But really, when you go out and you buy from a co-op meat, it's frozen. And so really, you keep it frozen, and you thought I only thaw out a 3-day supply in my refrigerator at any one time. And then I dump the raw meat in a bowl. I'll add, goat's milk, and I'll add a little pumpkin. And to achieve that 10%, vegetable matter that needs to go inside their diet. And each one is very intentional, and each one, fits a certain mold of what actually needs to happen. But so often is the observations that we make on our dog on a daily basis is the best healthcare we can give on raw feeding.
Got it. Now, with the hair tissue mineral analysis, you mentioned a little bit around the idea of heavy metals and other toxins. Can you share about how the test for those, and or what high results in any of those areas might point to?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we can test 7 different heavy metals, and the big ones we do test for are arsenic, mercury, and aluminum. But we can also test for lead and barium. There's one I'm failing to say, but yes. So really, for example, when we see a high arsenic, it's usually attributed to rice that is fed. So if you have rice as a filler inside either the kibble that you're feeding, or you've humanized it and you add rice to the diet thinking the dog needs more of a carbohydrate, they cannot digest rice. They lack the enzymes in their stomach to do it. So it just passes through them. But what they do get out of the rice is arsenic. And that really comes from how rice is grown. So rice is usually grown in in fields that have a high level of arsenic into it. So now your dog's body is absorbing that. So when we see that, and we can see in our intake form, because we ask the question, what have you been feeding your dog? And when we see rice, we are already anticipating that the dog is going to have a high level of arsenic. Then we can recommend removing the source, and then arsenic will chelate out of the system. Second one is, and chelate means just remove. So the next one is mercury. Mercury can cause seizures. So we've seen a lot of dogs come through our facility that has seizures. And so because of these seizures, we were not really, 100% saying it's mercury due to mercury, but mercury tends to be high on the report. And when it's at a dangerous level, you'll see more seizures coming on in the dog. Now, one way to get that out of their system is remove the source of mercury. And a lot of that comes from the vaccines that we are over vaccinating our pets today. And I do some Facebook Lives with our doctors and talk about the vaccination of our pets. And I noticed that you had an episode where you talked about vaccines. And so I think we over vaccinate to some degree, which is actually going to add a heavy metal to it, because that's what they use to stabilize the vaccine. And so mercury is in the system. Mercury doesn't leave your system. Mercury can break the blood-brain barrier, and it circulates throughout your body. So one way to remove it is by adding cilantro to the diet. So by adding just 1/4 cup of cilantro, add a binding agent with it, like dulce flakes, which is just Atlantic sea kelp. And that allows mercury to leave. Once you've stopped the source of it, then that allows it to start getting out of the body and excrete out of the body. Next one's aluminum. Aluminum is something that is just all around us. I mean, it's hard to, we tested a dog that grew up next to a coal mine, high levels of aluminum inside their system. And so one thing that removes that, and this is why we named the company Parsley Pet, Parsley removes aluminum. And just like mercury, have a binding agent with it, start adding parsley to the diet, your dog will not know. And it'll very slowly over time remove the aluminum and just stop the source of it. And that's just something that just happens in our world today, is we are inundated with heavy metals and toxins and everything that's around us. And this is what sparked us to move forward with the glyphosate test. As you know, glyphosate is an herbicide they spray on all of our grains. So Monsanto in the 1960s, after World War II, bought a company called Roundup and started to genetically modify our grain to only grow when glyphosate is spread on it. And they spray glyphosate at the time of planting, they spray glyphosate at the time of harvest. And they're starting to see episodes of glyphosate causing lymphoma cancer. And it's a really, I mean, it was originally created as it's not a vaccine, but it was originally created as an antibacterial, so that you would take if you had like amoxicillin.
Mm-hmm.
So glyphosate was just one of them. So when we consume glyphosate, it is actually killing our gut microbiome, our good bacteria inside our bodies, which is the forgotten organ. But you're getting glyphosate from garbanzo beans, lentils, you name the vegetable, you name the fruit, it's got glyphosate spread on it. What's sad is if you grow up, and I grew up in Moline, Illinois, next to farm fields, and it was in the air when you breathed it, and it was everywhere. I mean, they're still using it prevalent today. And so they're seeing dogs now have 10 times the level that humans have. So with a grain-free based diet, even with that one, with the heavy kibble diets that are out there now, they're seeing these high levels of glyphosate in the system. So that's something that we're really we're passionate about too, is identify the toxic loads inside your dog.
Mm-hmm. And so that glyphosate is part of the standard nutritional blueprint, the test?
No, that's actually a separate test.
Separate test.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually provided by HRI Labs, Larry Bolin. We know Larry Bolin well, and just incredible thought leader in this space. He's actually, him and his partner were the reasons why the non-GMO label got put on all of our food products. And then they stepped into glyphosate. And so one way that we do this is not only do you get to see the levels of glyphosate inside your dog, cat, or horse, you actually get to become a part of the animal exposure study and make effective change on removing glyphosate from our food stream.
Wow. Wow. So going down a little bit of a related rabbit hole on the site, you mentioned being passionate about soil health. Can you share
Yeah.
a little bit about that, and maybe what the parallels are with dog nutrition?
Absolutely. Most of our minerals that we receive in our food it comes from soil. So there is a very small supply of good, healthy soil left on the planet. And it's scary because the vegetables that we eat today are 80% less nutrient dense than the best vegetables our parents ate growing up.
Wow.
So the carrot that we're eating is not the same carrot that our parents ate. And also with good soil health comes flavor, like it has flavonoids within it. It has all the minerals that really drive up into the carrot or whatever vegetable that you're putting into your body. Or, the meat that, when you think of meat, you have to go back to the cow. Let's just take a cow, for example, as a ruminant animal. It has 3-chamber stomach, and all it does is eat vegetables. That's what it's meant to do. Its teeth can grind together. You're looking at all these levels that, a cow does that. Then those nutrients that cow is eating is what your dog is eating when it finally eats cow, because it's a carnivore. So really it's just all the food chain as it goes down, but it all starts with soil health. And if we want to improve the planet, so there was a few years ago when I was starting this, I went to a conference, the Bionutrient Food Association conference, and these guys are all about soil health, and they're bringing in all the thought leaders and all the scientists and are really trying to create awareness of what happens if we really kill our soil. So the typical farm field you walk in today, and let's say Iowa is an agricultural hotbed. And so when we walk into that field, and let's say it's a conventional farm that's been using chemicals, ammonia, glyphosate, all of that stuff to feed. If I walked out in that field and I dug a 10-foot hole, 10 foot wide, 2 feet deep in that farm field, middle of summer, I'd maybe only find 2 worms in that hole when I should find hundreds. What happens is we're killing not only the microbes in our soil, but we're killing everything else that helps support those microbes. And we have just dead earth that we're trying to grow vegetables out of for our own human consumption. and it's really just killing, everything, not only in the nutrients in our food, but also nutrients in our soil. I can go really far with this, but I won't because it'll scare the crap out of you. But on a good side is those that actually lean towards biodynamic farming, which means they're adding animal waste back into the soils as fertilizer. They're not using chemicals. They're allowing this is the vegetables are actually coming back and the soil is coming back. But one thing they also noticed was a drop in carbon in the environment around that actual farm field. They've done some studies and tests. So if you want to help the planet and you want to lower the amount of, dangerous gases in the earth and how our global warming is happening, repair our soils. Those microbes in the soils actually eat carbon out of the environment.
Wow. Yeah, there's a great documentary, The Biggest Little Farm. Really cool story about how they took, just arid land down in Southern California and revamped it and made a whole biodynamic farm. And like you said, the first thing they did was they went into the soil and did exactly what you said, got a bunch of manure and breathed or dumped life into the soil. And that's where it all started.
Yeah, and you feed it. You got to treat your soil like it's another animal or another plant that it's the next, responsibility that you have as a farmer or even a backyard farm. Don't add chemicals to your yard. I mean, I kind of take pride, I have a good looking yard, but I don't add chemicals to it. And I live in Colorado, so it's an arid desert. I mean, yeah, my grass is supposed to be brown for the first half of the year. If it's not, it means that I dumped a bunch of chemicals on it to get it to turn green. So, but really it's that start of, at the local level is what are we not adding to our water streams and what are we not adding to the environment and the struggles that we are going to see if we don't take action on it now. And so, yeah, I mean, documentaries like that come out is, I think, paramount. And, there's something that is, why are we seeing such a high incidence of autoimmune conditions? I see myself as a healthy guy. I've always been a healthy guy. I mean, I was a, athlete and all this stuff. And then why was I diagnosed with multiple sclerosis? And so when I started to research that, it was really around the toxins that I was consuming, which led to stress. And you look at the stress in our world today, we need to supply better foods for our bodies and our pets' bodies as well.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, Matt, I think we've covered a lot of great ground here. So any final advice for our listeners?
Start slow. It is a huge journey. It is a rewarding journey, just like with your own health, but run an experiment. Give 2 weeks. 2 weeks feeding your dog a raw diet. There are some great products that you can get from the store. Now at Parsley Pet, we are product agnostic. We don't promote any one product over another one, but there are a lot of really good raw feeding products. Try it for 2 weeks. That's it. And if you're concerned about the costs of it, if you're feeding a prescription-based diet, it really only costs maybe 5% more to feed raw. And it'll do a lot better for your pet's health by feeding it the actual diet it should consume. But start slow. Start slow, give it 2 weeks. See if your dog gets better. See if the coat gets softer and not shedding as much. See if you're getting, if you have an aging dog, see if the puppiness comes back, And that's a lot of what we see as well as the benefits of doing that. So with this whole movement, educate yourself. Start slow and experiment. Run an experiment on yourself for 2 weeks. And while you're doing it, run an experiment on your dog for 2 weeks.
Excellent. All right, Matt Rowe with Parsley Pet. Be sure to check them out at Parsley Pet. Let's see, parsleypet.com.
Yep.
And on Facebook at Parsley Pet, where you can sign up for Matt's weekly call called the Essential Nutrition for a Healthier Dog. Talk all about the hair tissue mineral analysis they do. And of course, at parsleypet.com, you can get the nutritional blueprint for yourself and get your dog tested, get all those results back with some, potential directions to take. And lastly, be sure to follow them on at Parsley Pet Wellness on Instagram, and also Matt's podcast, Pet Wellness Revolution. So Matt, thanks so much.
Tim, you are awesome. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care.
All right, you too.